Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're looking at Venezuela's state of emergency, and we're doing so in the company of anthropologist Paula Vasquez, who does field work in Venezuela, just back. She teaches at the French School of Higher Learning and Social Sciences. Always a mouthful, EHESS. Author of Chavism, A Compassionate Militarism. Vincent Tulive, novelist, author of Who Killed Simon Bolivar, his latest work in French, soon to be translated in English.
I hope so.
It's called At the Foot of Montmartre, and it's a semi-biographical story of a Venezuelan in Paris. We're also with graphic artist and designer Ileana Gonzalez, who is with us again. Thank you. And Brazilian academic Alfredo Valadao, of the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po. Last Friday, the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, declaring a 60-day state of emergency, extending his powers on food, distribution, energy, and security. He blamed what he called plots from the United States, but also from within the country.
Comrades, I'm ready to hand over to communal power the factories that some conservative bigwigs in this country have stopped. An idle factory is a factory handed over to the people. We're going to f***ing do it. The time has come to radicalize the revolution. The time has come to do it without hesitation. To hesitate is to lose ourselves. We have no choice but to do it.
Ileana Gonzalez, can he hang on?
I don't know if he's gripping for the last, I don't know.
When he talks about radicalizing the revolution, is that just talk?
That's just talk, and he has the support of the military, so that's another factor to take into consideration when we speak about Latin America. People are very unhappy, so if every time you go out of your home and you go to work and you're just praying that you're not going to be robbed, that you're not going to be killed, because so many robberies go wrong accidentally, or because people are very afraid and then they just fall off a cab and break their head, or just being attacked. It's an everyday thing. So people are very unhappy. I think he can't stay much.
You mentioned the M word, the military, and the opposition. Speaking of plots, the specter of coup plots.
What we Venezuelans need to be scared of is a social uprising or a coup. This is what we don't want. What we're asking for is to have our demand for a referendum validated.
Could there be a coup, Vincent Olivier?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that it's very tiring, because it's like the military is always like this Batman in Latin America where things go wrong. Oh, just call in the military, they'll fix stuff. So I don't know the intricacies of how the military is divided. There certainly are very different factions at work, but there is like the drug smuggling is headed by the military, by large swaths of the military. So that's also why they don't want to overthrow Maduro, because if you're handling the exchange of rates and you have the dollars and you also have the drug trafficking, you may not want things to change. So I don't know, but yes, the violence is down the road, as you were asking in the beginning. I do, in my opinion, we are headed towards like a Mad Max scenario of rampant failed state where there's no more rule of law, where there may be lynchings. And when that happens, yes, the military tends to come in, but the question is like how much damage. You have to choose now between malaria and cancer. It's like that, those are the things you have to deal with now in Venezuela.
Paula Vasquez, the last time there was an attempted coup in Venezuela was 2002. Hugo Chavez himself was a former military man himself. Is a coup really possible today? It's 2016.
It's already a military government. Venezuelan government is a military government. So the scenario is an auto-golpe, coup, themselves, between themselves. It's a military government, but the difficult to understand is how a military regime can have such a disorder in the society. That's difficult, because we identify always dictature with order
Dictatorship.
and dictatorship, and it's not the case. So you have
Could we have a scenario where there's a
enemy.
split? Could we have where we've seen, for instance, in Africa, where you have non-commissioned officers who rise up against the generals?
Yes, that could be, but there is always this rumor. This is a recurrent rumor. You know, but now it's like if the institution that is going to decide the future of the country maybe are the military, in fact, if they are against Maduro. But it's a problem of factions, of divisions of one power, because the Venezuelan government is a military government.
Last coup in Latin America was Honduras in 2009. Is another one possible in 2016 in Venezuela?
I don't really think. I agree with her that Venezuela has already a military government, so it's a question of factions inside. But what I think is the problem is that leftist populism in Latin America has this idea that they are the only legitimate government, and that every time there is an opposition or people making some critics or doing something, they say this is a plot to kick us out. So I think after when you divide society in such a way, at the end you eat your own poison, because it's true that you have people who say we have to kick these guys out. But I think that we have to look at, in Latin America, most regimes are presidential regimes. A presidential regime that doesn't have, and most of them have, some form of constitutional way of recalling a president, of destituting a president, could be a dictatorship. The problem we have now is that these leftist populists, they think that when they are elected, they can do whatever they want. And they are legitimate, and the opposition is not legitimate. So that's why everybody, every time they have problems, they say it's a plot, it's a coup, something's going to happen, etc. But I don't think Venezuela now, Venezuela's in a much worse position than to having a coup today, because we don't know where everything's going.
That's it, and opposition is already criminalized. You have people in prison, in jail in Venezuela. So the repression of a military regime is over there.
Let me ask on this, Vincent Olive, does Latin America have a problem with its left, or is it just simply that we're talking about nations where it's a winner-takes-all democracy at this point in time?
Well, I think there's a transition right now. The left that we had up till now is kind of changing in a certain sense. But I agree 100% that there is this rhetoric of any opposition to my idea as de facto represents some sort of a bourgeois kind of, it's a very Marxist kind of lecture. But I think that's changing, and I really think that in the whole continent that is kind of going in a different way. My fears in the beginning was that if Chavez messed things up, then the left would be banished, which is probably going to happen, and a very neoliberal hard right kind of ideology was going to be imposed, which is kind of what you can see. So,
but excuse me for asking on this, are events in Brazil perhaps proving him right? Because while there is a lot of corruption on both sides of the island, Brazil, Dilma Rousseff by no means considered the most corrupt of the politicians. In fact, there's more people who are under investigation in the new government than in the old one, it seems. So is that just fodder for all those people who are speaking of plots in Latin America?
No, it is fodder, but it's not true. Many of the Workers' Party ministers and people were totally corrupt too. Lula.
Or was that grounds to impeach Dilma Rousseff?
But Dilma Rousseff is not in an impeachment process for corruption. She's in an impeachment process for not respecting the legislative power, because she's an executive power. She's accused of crime of responsibility, which is not a judicial crime. It is a political crime that is judged by the Senate. But I think that I agree with what you said. There is something new in Latin America, is that people are little by little taking consciousness that just social justice is paramount, but not if you destroy the economy, if you destroy the institutions, you destroy even the advantages that people got during the distribution process, and that we should have more competent, less corrupt government. And this is good for Latin America. I don't know if what we call right in Latin America, the rightist parties, are going to do that, because they are also corrupt. But I think this new urbanized people that are much more connected and informed, they are not ready to stand anymore this kind of stuff in Latin America.
A higher standard is what
They need
want.
higher standards, and they are going to fight for it.
Lots of reactions on the hashtag F24 debate, including this one, pretty blunt. Maduro needs to resign ASAP. Let me ask you, Ileana Gonzalez, is there a bit of a Brazil effect on the events in Venezuela right now after the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff? Is that something Venezuelans are looking at?
I guess a lot of people are hopeful that something like this would happen in Venezuela. But people are on the social media making statements to go to embassies and make it possible that Venezuelans who are in foreign countries can vote for this referendum that would take place. So people are in the social media trying to get organized and do something about it in a democratic way, from the way I see it.
What's going to be the outcome of this recall movement?
It's going to be very hard because there is no impartial way to organize it. The national office of the organization of the election is completely dominated by the government of Maduro. That's one of the problems. So people are demanding this recall, but it's very difficult to say if it is going to take place this year, and if it's going to take place next year, the executive power is going to be to the vice president, which is Aristóbulo Istúriz, which is from the government, the executive government. No, it's going to be very hard, but people are asking for that.
And yet, you can argue about Venezuela's democracy, but there was an election and the opposition won, and they've taken their seats in parliament.
Is, what do you think it's a democracy here? Because if it's independence of powers, you don't have one, because the executive power and the judicial power are completely agreed to destroy the legislative, which is in the opposition hands. So is that a democracy, the division of power, or the elections? That's one thing. And the other thing is the state of emergency, because there you have a way of govern very strong from Chavez, always government by decree, by bills, executive bills. And the issue here is not to recognize the National Assembly, which is in the hands of the opposition.
At the same time, Chavez pointing the finger again at the United States. There's been a lot of barbs traded, a lot of tension over the years. Both the opposition and the government counting their friends and foes. We saw this week the visit of Chinese officials. There's been a rejigging of an oil for loans deal with China. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think they're just trying to find another bloodline in order to keep the kind of crazy spending going. But I don't see how that can, in the future, be conducive to the development of a country. But going back to what Paula was saying, I mean, the opposition has won other elections before. Chavez didn't pass the election in 2007, and then Ledesma, for example, in Caracas won. And every time the executive branch found a way of curtailing that, Ledesma was never the governor of Caracas. They created something on top of that, and they gave the powers to that person who was finger-pointed by Chavez. So when you talk about democracy or elections and all that, you have to be very careful of what we're talking about. Or threatening people that if you vote against the government, then you will be fired. And then you say, well, we had an election and we're free. I don't know.
Next Saturday, Nicolas Maduro says that there will be military maneuvers in the country, and he's also accusing a U.S. military plane of making an illegal entry over Venezuela. Your reaction to those?
Well, it's just the spin doctors of always. You have the Russians do that too, the Chinese. I mean, it's always this infatuation and this egocentric kind of approach where everybody, like, as if the States or Obama was every day wondering, like, ooh, I wonder what Maduro did today.
Just one word. The Venezuelans are always talking about imperialism. But most of their oil is sold to the United States. And worse than that, they have in the United States the biggest gasoline service stations in the country, which is Citgo, which is a Venezuelan from the Venezuelan state. So the Chinese, if they have to help again Venezuela, they will be much more expensive because they have a bad experience because the Venezuelans didn't pay the loans that the Chinese were giving. So now if the Chinese are coming back, ooh la la, they're going to make a lot of expensive.
Well, in this case, it's oil for loans.
Yes,
Yeah, but
But there is a problem with the
Sorry.
of the oil industry. PDVSA is lower, and the production of PDVSA is in a crisis. When Chavez arrived to the power, PDVSA produced 3,050,000 barrels per day. Now we are in 2006. 2,600,000 of barrels, so 1 million less. It's a lot. It's not, and the problem is not the price of oil in international market. The problem is an inside problem of the state of PDVSA. It's
and also that there's a loan debt. The bonus of Venezuela is coming up in October. You have to pay the international debt that you contracted. So that's why they're scrambling for the money, because all of the assets of Venezuela are international. And if in October you don't pay, they can seize your assets, which are all around the world, your refineries, etc. And that would be disastrous for the country. So Maduro and Chavez before him made conscious elections of paying the international investors in Wall Street and Europe over the import of medicines and food. They could have taken that money and used it to buy medicines and food, and they preferred to pay the loan debts in the States and in Europe and all over the world.
All right. Again, a lot of muscle flexing when it comes to the Americans, and muscle flexing within Venezuela itself. Now, in a recent report, Human Rights Watch saying Maduro's way of saying he's got a handle on crime domestically is big pre-dawn swoops on poor neighborhoods, like the one back in August in Brisas del Hipodromo. That's a low-income neighborhood in Valencia, a city in Carabobo state, where homes, some built in concrete with permits, were flattened. The men rounded up and jailed. And I guess the question is that the backbone of support for Hugo Chavez was from areas like this one, was it not, Paula Vasquez? So
yes, but the problem now is the scarcity and the hungry. You know, it's like an explosive situation because people, they're poor people, and middle class, as we saw in the report, last report, middle class and poor people are in the problem of hungry, which is quite new in the country. What's going to happen now? I work with public.
When you go to interview people in favelas,
yes,
what do they want? What do they aspire to?
They are eating once a day.
Yeah.
People are eating once a day. They organize themselves to take, there is no even coffee. If they can find sugar, they take hot water with sugar in the morning, and they try to eat once at 3 o'clock to be able to sleep until the next day. And there are like that. And I saw with public health officers, which we work and so on, you have now the children, their rates of growth, all children. I've been with children that have 10 years old, and they have the size of a 6-year-old child. It's a drama. We are in a humanitarian situation now in Venezuela. And that is quite difficult to understand because it was very violent, very fast. It's not like a famine, like a hungry problem like Ethiopia, but it's like people losing completely the capability to eat in 6 months. So what's going to happen after? And people are dying because there is a lack of medicine, terrible, of cancer, hypertension, diabetes, all the chronic diseases that needs a treatment, a particular treatment. The people are dying. It's like that.
You had a favorable eye on Chavism at one point. So
Sorry?
You had a favorable eye in the past on Chavism.
Me?
Yeah.
But I respect the electors. You know, you have to understand people. You have to understand people how they. But the problem is what it was an illusion, and it was a concentration of power in military. And people, I think, they didn't vote for that. But the military was so powerful in taking all the institutions that it's not a socialist government at all.
Reactions on the hashtag F24 debate. Very soon there'll be no country to destroy. Now, it's a bit of an exaggeration, isn't it?
No, I agree. I think, have in mind, the minimum wage is like the equivalent of 15 euros, and like 12 eggs are like 3 euros. So can you just imagine, how can you live with that? And when it's saying there's nothing more to destroy, it's because they have destroyed the health system, the education. Some international associations, they have offered help with medicine.
So what are you expecting from the international community, from neighboring states?
They have been offering help, like with medicine for doctors, but Maduro's government said no, we don't have a humanitarian crisis. It's an illusion. It's a fabrication of lies of the opposition. So we don't need. So he refused help from international associations.
Could things get so bad that there would be a Haiti-style invasion from outside forces?
No, I don't think so. Nobody wants to put its hands in Venezuela. Not the United States, nor Brazil, nor Colombia. Nobody wants to do that. Everybody's saying, let the Venezuela sort that thing together. And let's not get any input inside, because it's too complicated to do that. And maybe that will mean that Venezuela will go even more down the hole. But I don't think there is any intervention possible in the Americas today.
No. But there will be a collapse of the state. I mean, I do think that if things get worse, which is probably going to happen before things get better, we're talking about the total collapse of the state, about police not being able to rein in on criminal areas, about not having food distribution, which is happening now, absolutely.
All right, Vincent Tulive, Paula Vasquez, Ileana Gonzalez, and Alfredo Valadao, many thanks for being with us. Thank you for joining us here. Stay with us. Our Media Watch segment is next. As we say goodbye to Alfredo Valadao, we say hello to James Creedon.
Hi, François. So just to look at how this has been playing out on social media, starting with a hashtag in favour of the government. We'll start with a look at that. There's been a bit of, I guess you could say, propaganda on social media. Chavista and revolutionary, and various images of Hugo Chavez. And I suppose the idea being the continuity from his policies need to be defended, or etc., or at least the vision. We won't betray you, Comandante, the children of the country, etc., etc. You see Hugo Chavez in silhouette, and then you see images of vultures as well under the same hashtag. In other words, because of the current economic difficulties, the vultures are ready to descend on the revolution.
So that's interesting. Those that are rallying behind the government, they're showing the image of the late Hugo Chavez, not that of Nicolas Maduro.
Almost, yes, almost uniformly, at least under that hashtag, you're seeing more images of Hugo Chavez than of the current leader.
Paula Vasquez, Hugo Chavez still a popular guy in Venezuela?
Sure. It's you have to study this person. You cannot. It's such an important leader. The Venezuela is never going to be the same that before Chavez was there. So you have to understand this phenomena. Sure. And you have to deal with it. And that's important for the opposition. Chavistas are not going to disappear. You have to deal with them because they are part of the political landscape of the country.
He's like a saint to many people.
And
a real saint.
Indeed, I think that comes across very clearly in the many tweets under that hashtag. Moving quickly to an article in The Atlantic where they're talking about, well, Venezuela falling apart, focusing on, indeed, the medical crisis, amongst other issues in this article. And they give one example. You can see, I think we had an image, well, that's another image in a poor district but the one I was looking for is this pharmacy here, ill-stocked, and what they're describing in this article is the total collapse of a healthcare system, scarcity of medicine, which is costing lives every day, psychiatric patients struggling, for example, with schizophrenia, who have to go without medication. Also, then the I suppose choice to continue to spend massive amounts of money, for example, on a Formula One racer, Pastor Maldonado,
yes,
who is getting something like $45 million every year from the Venezuelan state oil company. So clearly it's very hard to justify that kind of spending at a state level when you have a healthcare system in collapse. So I guess the Atlantic is looking at different examples here of how the economic crisis is affecting people in their everyday lives, and perhaps where spending could certainly, with simple decisions, be improved. So what else do we have? I suppose then, of course, all of the pundits with their various different takes on things. The fact that the recall referendum has been blocked for many. This is a relief valve to economic tensions that is being blocked. This, I suppose, is an interesting comparison on the Economist website, Spot the difference, and on the right-hand side what you have is images from Zimbabwe.
It's very similar. Indicators are very similar of Zimbabwe's situation 50 years ago.
So inflation indeed off the charts.
Where the president then is still the president.
It's Mugabe, yes. A big friend of Chavez, in fact.
So indeed, perhaps the economic crisis not enough to shift regimes in some cases. The clearest message that Venezuela is in crisis comes from its own government, says Stephen Gibbs. I suppose in the sense in terms of the decisions that have been taken regarding the state of emergency. A couple of more comments. Companies, this of course more the business point of view, companies should brace for potential violent unrest in Venezuela. That is Pablo Alonso, who is an analyst for JP Morgan. And I suppose just to finish with this particular tweet, Venezuela's situation is but the natural culmination of ignoring corruption. So everybody, I guess, with their own individual reading of how it got to this stage, François.
All right, many thanks for that, James Creed. And I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.